Eastern and Western philosophical insights. So we decided to make it a platform where we can freely discuss and organize some of the lectures by eminent professors and by experts of the subjects. And I'm very happy to announce that Government Degree College Kursanda is a part of this. And with the college, the government of Uttar Pradesh is also involved in the process. And when and if the time permits, I would like to even host a kind of seminar of this platform in our college, so that we can even discuss offline on one-to-one platform also. So it's going to be a good exercise. I am looking forward to listen to today's speaker, Dr. Shalini Kaushik. I hand over the mic to Dr. Sapna, and I'm waiting forward with my students and with my colleagues to this event. Thank you very much. Sapna.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words. We surely look forward to keep working with you. And thank you so much, sir, once again for your support.
Yeah, thank you.
While we all tend to be in this continuous rugged fight between what is right and what is wrong, a binary which seems to have haunted mankind ever since eternity, the lockdown seems to have added to it this new unique set of binaries. Like what is productivity or what is not productivity, what is fruitful and what is mere waste of time. Should these binaries even exist? Well, I wonder. And luckily, we have someone with us today who might be trying to address this busyness with wasting time, so to say, and that too in a poetic manner. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will now take you through to what I may call a slight creative digression from the event today, an experience which may strike some similar chord with each one of you. It is time we hear from Arijit Roy, a postgraduate student at the Department of English, Delhi University. He seems to be his arena well, having founded Petriport, the creative society at Sri Venkateshwara College. He was also the student editor of his college magazine and organized a number of literary events in the college. He's also served as the youth ambassador of Delhi Poetry Festival. And what's more impressive, that he just got his first book of poems titled In the Hour of Sky, published by Writers Workshop India last October. So far, he has been invited over to a number of institutions and a number of events for his recital, and it is time that we get to hear him now. So, Arijit Roy, the floor is virtually open for you. Over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible? Good morning, everyone. First things first, thank you, Yogesh sir and Nidhi ma'am, for providing me this opportunity to recite my poem. My respects to all the teachers and fellow speakers and everybody, all the scholars here. It's great to get an opportunity to be here. Well, the poem which I am going to recite is a product of and about the lockdown. We all have got a lot of time on our hands, but I can vouch for myself. Productivity has been an issue, but slowly and steadily we realize that even wasting a time is an art. So without further delay, I'd like to recite my poem now.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Shreya, please remove your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Busy wasting time. What did you say I was? An idler? Jesus, you've got no rhyme. I'm very busy these days, friend. I'm busy wasting time. Yes, this task is real, and I'm seriously occupied. Even if this be madness, there is method in it that surely cannot be denied. It's different than doing nothing, you see. Here is an approach and an aim. And if you work too hard at this, you can surely build a name. Sometimes this can get spiritual too, as worldly tasks are put away. One then meditates on the higher truth of how to waste the entire day. Upon becoming enlightened thus, to the world this sermon you preach. No matter what the ignorant say, one must continue to teach. And so, my friends, no more delay. I say, get busy wasting time. It's a huge responsibility and uphill task, given only to the prime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arijit. That was indeed a thoughtful and invigorating beginning for us. And I just wonder, and I'm just throwing up impromptu here. You've left us with a question perhaps to ponder. Are we busy wasting time, or are we wasting time by just being busy? So I get it's all of us, who has to figure it now in the end. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shalini Kaushik, an assistant professor, Department of English, Government PG College, Guna, Madhya Pradesh. She completed her PhD on aesthetics of Walt Disney films, a study in relation to the feminist theories and conceptualization. An alumna of Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi, she's also created national eligibility tests and state eligibility tests of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. In March 2014, she was also a part of a project called Gyanodaya Fourth, which was Delhi University's fourth initiative in the series College on Beats. She's been a member of Women's Studies Development Cell of Jesus and Mary College and has been actively involved ever since in gender discourses and construct through various academic platforms. Apart from interning with HTCT Delhi, the lifestyle supplement of Hindustan Times in 2011, she's also published several diary entries, letter to the editor, cover story, feedback, etc. in HTCT, Hindustan Times, and Brunch, respectively. It gives me immense pleasure now to hand over the session to our resource person for the day, Dr. Shalini Kaushik. I also request, before we begin with ma'am, to all the participants who have joined us today on Google Meet as well as on Facebook, to kind of post your questions, comments, or feedback right in the chat box or in the comment section. We would love to take some of them after the talk is over. So yes, Dr. Shalini, now over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sapna, for that introduction. I'm very, very thankful to Dr. Yogesh and Dr. Savesh, all the professors and teachers behind English for Nation and Government Degree College, Hathras. So I have my own guide. Thank you, first of all, Crystal ma'am, for being here, and my own guide, Professor B.I. Guru. So today I'll be presenting on Aesthetics of Walt Disney Films, a study in relation to the feminist categories and conceptualization. I'll just share the screen just for a second.
Please take care of your mics.
One second.
Meanwhile, I just request once again all the participants to kindly mute yourself so that we have an uninterrupted session. Thank you.
Is it visible? Sapna, is the screen visible?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Not yet.
Try it one more time. Try it one more time.
Yeah. I get it. Is it visible now?
Yes, you can now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry for the delay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So in the introductory video to this talk, which is available on the English for Nation platform, I had talked of certain stereotypes like pink and blue, the binaries of pink and blue, dolls and guns, how home science is being associated with a particular gender, and BLEd being available only in women's colleges of Delhi University. So we see, I've talked of how sexism has been normalized in private and public spaces. So I'm sure most of the women might have heard at some point of time from their parents, while sitting on a couch, maybe "theek se baitho." And then you might have noticed when women travel in public transport, say auto rickshaw, they take very little space and their legs close to each other. Also, what becomes problematic is when beauty products, when used, the lines between conscious use of beauty products and unnecessary blurred. You might have even noticed the pockets in women's dresses. So the pockets, when you see either women's dresses have no pockets or very, very small pockets. So again, a marketing strategy where women would go for bags and to keep their essentials. So even in case of spaces, when we see, we might have seen a lot in films and advertisements, there are spaces which are allocated to a particular gender. So there's a division of spaces. And when women come into a male's arena or a space, they're seen as laughing stocks. Similarly, the language that we use every day is conditioned by patriarchy most of the times. The simplest example of it being the swear words in Hindi, if we see. So now there are certain choices, all the choices are to be respected, but at the same time, we need to question that. We need to have an awareness of what choices we are making. So this questioning of choices, we need to see that if these choices are speaking of patriarchal rhetoric, or are they really choices that one is making? So, so this is Noida's pink toilet that I talked of in the introductory video. So my research work is based on, like I've divided the contents: introduction, Chapter 1, dresses and body language as markers of subordination, question mark, spaces, geographical and metaphorical, songs, a quest for identity or a language of patriarchy, question mark, and conclusion. So, aesthetics can be seen as there can be two definitions for it. One, as a study of beauty, which relates to the universality of experience by the virtue of refinement. And second, as a framework of principles for analyzing a work of art. So I would go with the second definition. So my framework is, my aesthetics is feminist theory and or criticism. So this is a list of movies that I would be analyzing. They are Walt Disney animated films based on classic fairy tales. Cinderella 2, Cinderella 3 are direct-to-video sequels to Cinderella 1950, which again is based on Charles Perrault's Cinderella. The Princess and the Frog 2009, based on The Frog Prince by Brothers Grimm and The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker. Tangled, based on Rapunzel by Brothers Grimm. Frozen, based on The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. So this is a DVD cover of Cinderella 2. So appearances can be deceptive, though the theme seems blue, but you still get the binaries of blue and pink in the film. This is a DVD cover of Cinderella 3. So, the cover itself speaks a lot about the facade of the foot size. So what if the slipper didn't fit? So this whole facade of the foot size that I'll be discussing. And the Princess and the Frog, Tiana being a waitress, but she is shown in one of the dresses of a princess, again, which is not her own dress. This has been borrowed by Charlotte. In Tangled, you see even the animal has a sword, but Rapunzel only relies on her hair. Frozen, Elsa and Anna, I feel, are equally important as female protagonists, but you see the positioning of Elsa is behind Kristoff. So the lesser importance given to her in the frame. So the reason why I simplify my title, why I have used feminist categories and conceptualization. So conceptualization would point towards the concepts, comments, or ideas of various feminists that I'll be using to support my primary analysis of the text. And feminist categories would talk about these feminists from different waves, types, or kinds of feminism, but I'm not restricting to any particular kind or wave of feminism. Also, categories would work at another level, the categories that I have created through my chapterization of dresses and body language, and the songs and the subtitles that I have, subcategories that I have. So radical feminism, we all know, was problematic. It worked in extremes. Anger was directed towards men instead of patriarchy. Lesbianism was promoted. Institution of marriage was criticized, but the other institutions which supported the institution of marriage were not criticized. So, but again, we cannot forget the efforts of radical feminists. Because of their efforts, we are speaking today. So there was this need to desocialize or individualize and do away with the universalizing of the feminist issue. So thus came the need for a liberal attitude, and the question of choice. So feminism is really hyphen presentation of women rather than representation, where hyphen represents revisionary history. So the feminists that I'll be using to support my primary analysis belong to different geographical locations, indicating certain cross-cultural similarities, but I have no intention of universalizing the feminist issue. So these are the 11 official Disney princes. So we have Tiana, Aurora, Pocahontas, Mulan, Belle, Jasmine, Snow White, Ariel, Cinderella, Rapunzel, and Merida from Brave. Elsa, Anna, and Moana do not get to enter the official Disney princess tag. Maybe I'm just guessing because Elsa and Anna are 2 in number and Disney princess has to be 1. And I have no idea why Moana is not put into that, because though she is the daughter of a chief, similarly Pocahontas is also daughter of a chief. So, but Pocahontas gets to be there and Moana does not. So I feel the whole of the selection process depends on the Walt Disney Company. So when I analyze films before the films that I have taken in my research, so I see after watching these films, I've noticed that Snow White from 1937, Cinderella from 1950, and Aurora, they seem to be submissive. They've internalized patriarchal notions. Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, Pocahontas, and Mulan, they question, but they stick to the pattern. They question only in case of love and marriage. Cinderella from Cinderella 2 and Cinderella 3 takes forward the love of being a princess and questions only within the setup of a princess. Tiana focuses on career, but marriage takes the limelight by the end of the film. And Rapunzel falls in love with a man who shows her the outside world. Elsa and Anna redefine the act of true love, but Anna still gets Kristoff in the process. Merida and Moana, they have no love interest, and then not even looking for them. So the reason why I've not included Brave and Moana in my selection, it's because they are based on legends, and I've only included the films based on classic fairy tales. So chapter 1, dresses and body language. So Kamla Bhasin would say in What is Patriarchy that subordination, irrespective of the class that women belong to, takes various forms. And these forms include discrimination, disregard, insult, violence, control, exploitation, oppression. So dresses would include costumes and overall appearance of protagonists and other female characters. Body language would include gestures and postures. Batki says that what happens with a feminine body is seen as a spectacle, and there's surveillance on that body at 2 levels. One is the outsider's gaze that we have, and one with the self-surveillance that female takes in. I'll be seeing if dresses limit the movement of women's bodies or they have no impact on their bodies. So Bhasin would say that in understanding gender, that many a times what happens, dresses do influence the mobility, sense of freedom, and dignity of people. So act of dressing is more like a ritual in the first 3 films that I've taken. So let me talk of Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True. So we see binaries of blue and pink in the film. There is use of neck cuffs again, which could be seen as a marker of domesticity, generally used for pet animals. Off-white and pink gown, indicating towards purity of a princess. Pink ribbon, and when Cinderella is not up to the mark in terms of her dressing, she's called a laundry maid or a scullery maid. So Siva Goswami in one of her columns says that women have a very, very stringent dress code. They are prescribed these dress codes from the moment they enter the world and to the time they departed. And it's a lifelong service, no matter what. It doesn't matter if they didn't sign up for it. So we see Cinderella dressing up in frills, curled hair, tight torso, Caroline, reminding us of the Victorian age, and she's sick of it. And when there's this dressing, when she says, I want to dress in my own way, she's back to gown. But the irony is that gown is no less fancier than the gown she was in before. So jewelry, new gown, shoes, these are most important for Lady Tremaine and Anastasia and Rosella. So Germaine Greer in The Female Eunuch would say that on cosmetics and clothes, that when cosmetics are used for adornment in a conscious and creative way, they're not emblems of inauthenticity. but they should be questioned when they're used for hiding blemishes or hiding a repulsive thing. So Anastasia is very greedy, and she wants all the gowns, makeup, and bigger necklace of Cinderella. So Susan Sontag in one of her essays says, a woman's beauty, a put down or power source, that what happens with ideal beauty is self-oppressive. So women are generally taught to see their bodies in different parts. So they evaluate each and every part separately, and they submit it to scrutiny. For example, breast, hips, waistline, neck, etc. So this is something similar to what Irish Marion Young and Swift also says on Clothes and Identities. Young says that when women share clothes, they also share a certain kind of bond. So with sharing of clothes, there's a flow of identities. And similar to it is what Swift is saying in A Tale of a Tub, that we don't wear clothes, but clothes wear us. So when we see body language, batting of the eyes by pom-pom. Again, batting of the eyes is very stereotypically seen that women do it to get their work done. Chivalry is seen in such a low level that a man is saving a woman from a mouse, so he's becoming a hero. Cinderella is made to learn dancing by putting books on her head. So this act of balancing, which is always associated with women, that you have to balance your home, you have to balance your work and home. So this balancing act, which is associated with her, and the use of stick. So Young and she's made to dance in a certain way in a particular space. She's not supposed to take much space that is available to her. So even Irish Marion Young would say that what happens with women, the space, they actually take less space that is than the one that is available for them. So the act of throwing away the gown is seen as a liberation on the surface, whereas she feels that but she's ironically getting into the role of a princess again by throwing that and wearing another gown. So Anastasia's movement, who is not the main lead, are freer than the main lead, which is Cinderella. Then Anastasia rides the chariot in excitement, whereas Cinderella has to fulfill the parameters of a princess, so she rides the horse very delicately. Smile is seen as a means to impress man. And Sandra Lee Batke in Femininity and Domination says that women's movement are subjected to a still finer discipline. So there's always this dichotomy of a nice girl versus a loose woman. So nice girl would avoid the bold staring, and a loose woman would look on to whatever pleases to her. And also she makes a remark that women are trained to smile more than men too. So in Cinderella 3 dresses, the role of costumes lessens here. Cinderella is seen in her maid dress, barefoot, and this whole scene where Prince has to bring the shoe for Cinderella to wear reminds of the role of the glass slipper in Cinderella. If we see that in Indian context, this is a belief that used to be there in India, that women before marriage, women's feet before marriage were inspected because of, especially in northern India, because a flat foot was supposed to bring in bad luck. So Anastasia and Gisela do all the household chores. And we see Susan Sontag, and there's a constant sisterly rivalry between the two. So Sontag would say that, beauty may not always console. The beauty of face and figures torments and subjugates. So there's when they're fighting and for the chores, we are also reminded of what Luce Irigaray would say about women, gestures of women. That the gestures of women are in a way paralyzed. They're always part of a masquerade. So we are unable to read this gestural code of women's bodies. Anastasia is called Twinkle Toes sarcastically by Gisela because of her, bad dancing or not up to the mark kind of dancing. And Germaine Greer would say on ballroom dancing that, even in ballroom dancing, it's kind of, it subjugates women because women take a step backwards and her face is very close to the man, but the faces are not touching. And women have to make themselves feel very weightless against the ground. So grace and poise are again limitations to the movements of a princess. And Batke says that a feminine body has to have 3 things. And this 1, constriction, 2nd, grace, 3rd, eroticism, constrained by modesty. And this is what we all see in the princess. all the princes that I have generally with the princess figure. So Anastasia's movements are free when the authority of her mother is not around, and Cinderella is always helped by the prince to get down from the horse, except for once when she takes a charge of going to her wedding. So what we notice is that Cinderella in 2007 and Ariel in 1989 are quite similar, because their ultimate goal is still marriage. So we haven't traveled much from 1989 to 2007. So dresses in The Princess and the Frog, we see Charlotte wearing pink and peach gowns. For Charlotte, makeup is something which attracts a man. Tiana does not think like Charlotte, but ends up being a princess in the royal dresses. Mama Odie is seen to be a carefree woman, but the reason for that is it's the animal world, and in this chain of hierarchy, humans are always above animals. And the concept of dresses is goes away when they turn Tiana and Naveen turn to frogs. Sweat for Charlotte is seen as unbearable. Something it is very very. One should even think that sweat, which is something very natural, is unbearable for Charlotte. So Naomi Wolf in Beyond the Beauty Myth says that clothing and disguises could be taken as a legitimate passion when a woman's sexuality is under control, but when it's not, when it becomes a compulsion, it's a kind of harassment. So Charlotte immediately adjusts her gown, and this act of adjusting her gown could be related to narcissism, whereas Batke would say that feminine narcissism is actually an infatuation with an inferiorized body. So women are always concerned with what I am not, and I am unacceptable as I am. So Tiana dances at the end, but this dance points towards the dance of getting married to Prince Naveen more than owning the restaurant. Movements as frogs is the movements of as frogs is free because there are no clothes and there is no restriction on them. This is something on the lines of what Olaf, the character from Frozen 2, would say, that he loves being without clothes because clothes are a burden to him. So there are variations of crying for Charlotte. One variation when she cries awaiting for her Prince Charming. Her makeup is spoiled in that crying. But when she is happy for Tiana and Naveen, for the union that they have, the crying is seen as a good crying, so her makeup is not spoiled there. In Tangled, Rapunzel wears same kind of dress in the whole film. It's a purple drindle, and purple again pointing towards royalty. And she does not wear any shoes in the film. So again, the question of subordination does not come here. Hair is not a marker of femininity, but the healing property goes away when they're cut. Her identity is based on it because she is referred to as Blondie when she has her long hair, and then when she doesn't have it, it's brunette. And when people stumble on her long hair, Eugene asks the girls to braid it so that her movement is not restricted. Gothel is obsessed with being young, but not for a man, but for her own self. At the same time, she cannot accept aging as natural. In body language, we see that there are free movements of Rapunzel inside the tower, yet she's not free because she longs to go out. Frying pan is used to hit, to fight, and not as a utensil in the kitchen. And versus mother is a kind of facial expression that the hero Eugene makes, so that he feels that the women would get impressed by that, but it doesn't work on Rapunzel initially. So when Rapunzel goes out of the tower, steps out of the tower, she is referred to as Jumpy. She also has this in her subconscious somewhere that man would be her savior. The act of chaining Rapunzel is symbolic of act of curtailing her sexuality. And crying is associated with Rapunzel, and it's seen as a medium of expression. And only once her father is shown crying, but Eugene, the potential hero, doesn't cry. In Frozen, dresses do not confine the movement of Elsa and Anna. Gloves restrict Elsa's movement because, again, contact with the society. Gloves of Elsa are a necessity, whereas gloves of Cinderella were ornamental. Freckles are seen to be beautiful. There's a difference between the glass heels of Elsa and Cinderella. In Cinderella, they are more about fitting into the tag of princess, and for Elsa, they're very liberating and empowering. Gray hair, Anna is very worried about her gray hair, and Sontag would say in the double standard of aging that aging when seen in case of a man, it's seen as a destiny, man's destiny, and very, very human. But when it's seen in terms of women, it's seen with vulnerabilities, and to be a woman is to be an actress, and being feminine is a kind of theater with its appropriate costumes, decor, lighting, stylized gestures. And when we talk of body type, and when we see all the protagonists, they have a lean body type, and the ones who are the grandmother figures like Mama Odie or fairy godmother, they are on the heavier side. So Greer would say that when women's bodies are treated as aesthetic objects without function, we deform them and their owners. And Woolf would again say that what happens to women? Women are seen as mere beauties in men's culture, so that culture can be kept male. So in terms of body language, grace and poise is not seen in Anna when she falls off the boat, and she's not even worried of that. Building of snowman is seen as a depiction of sisterly love between Elsa and Anna. Anna is seen in a very active mode, and she undertakes the journey of saving Elsa. She is seen on she fights on this head Kristoff on the sledge. She takes the charge. She hits Hans, and she's even open to skating. Only weather conditions limit Anna's movement, and her ill health limit her movement. Elsa's chaining limit her movement, and Anna wouldn't judge Kristoff for crying. Also, the question of consent. So when we see in this, when Kristoff wants to kiss Anna, he asks her first. She takes the consent of her. Only when he gets a yes, he does that. But in Tangle, there is no concept of consent, because Eugene cuts the hair of Rapunzel without asking her. So in chapters 2, spaces, geographical and metaphorical, I've seen spaces not in terms of as people would see in the field of geography. Spaces and places are used interchangeably here. And Basine incorporate here, there's this activity exposure stage of Ruth Hartley with Basine talks of. So in this, what happens, she says that women are given different women and men are assigned different spaces, and according to that, they are given different activities. For example, it's very, very natural that women go to kitchen very, very naturally. So what happens when a child sees all of it, they unconsciously imbibe in it, everything in this stage. So when we see castle, river, and train flag, very common in all the Disney films. So this could be seen as depicting castle at one level could point towards warmth, protection, love. At another level, it could point towards confinement for women's sexuality. The usual happily ever after, which comes with the element of magic. River, train would point towards hope, life, continuity, movement, and green on the side of the river, pointing towards fertility, again associating it with women. Flag as a concept, flag could be seen as a concept of identity and a belongingness to the royal castle or family. In Cinderella 2, there's a division of labor, and we see that a castle versus outside. So all the work which is the work of inside, like organizing a royal banquet or the spring festival, is assigned to Cinderella, whereas the prince is assigned state affairs, because according to the king, state affairs are the most important and other works are nonsense, unimportant. So Basine says it's very easy to point towards something like who decides what is natural and what is not natural. So it's very easy to reduce everything to nature, because you don't need to question or challenge patriarchal privilege then. So ball is seen as a medium to catch men, where this is also inverting the tradition of Swayamvar in ancient India that we used to have. And also Lady Tremaine seems to be similar to Mrs. Bennet of Pride and Prejudice, but minus the evil of Lady Tremaine, because both of them want their daughters to get married to rich men. And Sontag would say, beauty is a form of power, and but this power is not freely chosen by women, and it's a power that negates itself. It's not a power to do, but a power to attract. So Chariot is seen as a place where Cinderella is in a very passive mode, which is coming back from a honeymoon in a chariot, whereas Anastasia is not the lead, is seen riding it freely to get the love of her life. Market again in Cinderella 2 is owned by men. In metaphorical spaces, sewing is associated with women, and the onus of narrating the story is taken by men. So there's this even in the animal world. So there's gender division of labor here. Reading, women read fairy tales, whereas men read serious books. So Basim says that education also is problematic at times because it's patriarchal, because it justifies, perpetuates, or ignores inequalities between men and women. So Cinderella's romance is seen as natural, whereas Anastasia's romance is seen as uncommon. And Sontag would say that there are just what happens in the case of female beauty. There's just one standard sanctioned to of female beauty, which is the girl, and for men we have two standards of female beauty: the boy and the man. In Cinderella 3, we see a forest, which is a celebratory place for Cinderella, and for Anastasia, it's a miserable place. It reminds us of A Midsummer Night's Dream's forest, where only the difference being that forest is more towards carnivalesque, and here already it's in a happy state in Cinderella. Lady Tremain's home is seen as a place which is full of patriarchal notions. So there's no, it's seen that if you don't have a Prince Charming, Lady Tremaine would say, if you don't have a Prince Charming, you have to do household chores. So Anastasia and Drizella are self-sufficient in doing the chores, but they don't want to do it. And glass slipper ritual also takes place at her home. So Young would say that home is a place where one could be seen in particularity and have a secure identity, but that's not the case in Lady Tremain's home. And Ayan Hirsi Ali in The Caged Virgin says that what happens in traditionally oriented Muslim communities, often the mothers keep their daughters under thumbs, and mothers-in-law make the lives of their daughters-in-law unbearable. And this could be again extended to all the communities. It's not just Muslim communities. Ship is seen as a place where Prince comes saving the damsel in distress. Chariot in Cinderella 2 was seen, Cinderella in Cinderella 2 in the chariot was seen in a passive mode, and here she's seen in an active mode, but only for her marriage. So the ultimate aim is only marriage. Sword fight here is a masculine activity, and the magical world belongs to fairy godmother. The magic wand is stolen by Anastasia. So Anastasia is seen as an invader, and she did that because she wants a prince of her own. So how she has internalized everything. And Lady Tremaine wants power, riches, and revenge, and Drizella wants no laundry and wants to be rich. So all associated with being so materialistic. In The Princess and the Frog, Tiana's home is not gendered. So there's sharing of work that we see at her home. And Adichie would say in a feminist manifesto in 15 suggestions that doing is a verb. Father is as much a verb as a mother. So one should reject the language of help. When Tiana is seen working at the restaurant as a waitress, she's seen to be very hardworking. But for her mother, being hardworking is really good, but being too hardworking is a shame. So, Adichie again would say that, and we should all be feminists, that, we teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. So we teach girls to have ambition, but not too much. Be successful, but not too successful. So because that would threaten a man. Forest, we see a lot of sexist comments in the forest. And here we see that Naveen advises other animals that you should there are a lot of women to choose from, so you should be very, very wise in choosing a women. So it's as if they are available in a market. So it's seen as a celebratory place at the end of the film because of the element of love and marriage. Tiana's palace, the restaurant she opens up at the end, at the beginning of the film she sees a dream of opening her restaurant with her mother, and at the end she owns it because she married Naveen the prince. So when there's career versus marriage, career is important for Tiana, but marriage is most important for Tiana's mother. Reading, both men and women read fairy tales in their childhood. Mincing is something Tiana makes Naveen mince. Again, Basine would say, as women don't cook with their wombs. So love and marriage, when we say Charlotte is waiting for her prince, and as Aditi says that, marriage should never be seen as an achievement. It could be happy or unhappy, but never should be seen as an achievement. So for Tiana, marriage is not a concern, but yet she ends up choosing the same over her restaurant. Mama Odi is seen as a priestess. Again, the reason for being a priestess is she is in the animal world. We have a male priest in the human world. Entangled, Rapunzel is seen in two phases in the tower. In the first phase, she's happy and she wants to go out. She's submissive. In the second phase, she's rebellious and loud and confronts Gothel. Both is seen as a place where her dream has come true. But Eugene teaches her later that it's a beginning of other dreams, and she should dream for other things as well. And which in a way is falling in love with Eugene. Later we get to know that. Window is a part of Tower and also a barrier to, as well as it connects to Rapunzel's identity as a princess. Snuggly Duckling is a place where Rapunzel communicates well with giants, whereas Eugene cannot, despite the fact that Rapunzel was always in the tower and she did not have human contact except with Gothel. Tunnel is a place where Rapunzel's hair saves Eugene and herself. And you see that there's a transference of authority that we have. First, Rapunzel, when she was born, she was under the authority of her parents. Then she moved under the authority of Gothel. Then she moves under the authority of Eugene, and finally back to the kingdom. So the cycle is complete. She's back to where she started from. Stealing by Eugene is seen as a profession. Like Eugene steals, and yet he is the potential prince. Gothel in a way steals Rapunzel and becomes the evil character. So horse riding is... Rapunzel is never seen riding the horse, despite the fact that she communicates with Maximus really well, whereas Eugene does not, and he rides it really well. Reading, Rapunzel reads all kinds of books. Rapunzel's mother is seen reading a book, and it seems that it's a prayer book, and Eugene reads all the adventurous books. Reputation is something Eugene says is what a man has, so it's associated with men. And love and marriage, again, Rapunzel falls in love with a man who is her agency to the outside world. So Rapunzel's love has transformed Eugene. He stopped stealing. So this is all the patriarchal rhetoric that we have. It's believed that a woman is needed to correct all the ills or wrongs in a man. So Arundel's in Frozen, what we say is Arundel's kingdom. So Elsa is not accepted as the queen because of her curse. Sorcery and monster are the terms associated with her. So this reminds of Frankenstein. What happens in Frankenstein? The question always arises that who is the real monster, Victor Frankenstein or the monster? Similarly, is Elsa the real monster or the society? So Anna is a princess and she's happy to be so, but at the same time she's not aware of the problems of the working class. The world of trolls is a world where Elsa, when she was young, she developed a fear because of her power/curse. Washing of clothes is associated with women in this world of trolls, and Anna is inspected for marriage. So this reminds of Eunice D'Souza's poem that marriages are made. So where women are made, implying to manufacturing of raw materials, that women are manufactured through marriage. And Kristoff's sledge, what happens here is Anna is questioned here for her breeding, and Anna is judged for being engaged to a stranger. The foot size is not important here, whereas the foot size in Cinderella, foot size of a man is not important, but foot size of a princess is very important in Cinderella. Elsa's ice castle is seen as free, and it tests and she can test her limits there, and she embraces her transgression. So ice cutting is seen as a masculine activity. Trade is seen as owned by men in Frozen. Love and engagement, Elsa seems more reasonable in this case, and Anna is naive and gullible. Elsa does not have any male love interest, whereas Anna has first hands and then Kristoff. And the true love is redefined here because of the sisterly love that is which is depicted. chivalry, the whole setup of man wanting to be a hero. So Hans wanting to be a hero here. So when I speak of songs, a quest for identity or a language of patriarchy. So I'm seeing identity as an individual identity and not group identities. So Basine would say that, patriarchy earlier was defined as a rule of the father or the patriarch, but today it's more about, relations, power relations, which keep women as subordinate. So I've seen the songs as a part of the films and not in isolation. So in Cinderella 2, I'll only talk of the very significant songs here. So in Cinderella 2, it seems that Cinderella is raising her voice against the rules and traditions of the palace, but actually she is only questioning within the setup of a princess, and in what's inside that counts, which is also similar to one of the songs of Aladdin. Here, Cinderella prepares Anastasia on how to impress the baker, and her grooming is seen in parallel to the grooming of Lucifer, the cat. So this reminds me of Aranya Johor's slam poetry titled "A Brown Girl's Guide to Beauty," where she discusses about the ideal beauty body type, which society expects us, and women internalize it. So she would say that society or people would want a curvy chick but not the cellulite. They would want big butt but not thick thighs, small talk but not waist smaller, want the heart big but the chest bigger. So these are certain stereotypes which women imbibe in them to fit in our so-called patriarchal society. So put it together again, asks women to to put together everything to make sense. So this whole act of balancing again, and it has a similar line from Little Snow White, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," and but again, it seems to me as a language of patriarchy because Cinderella was never accepted as a dish maid. She only could enter the ball when she was a princess. So perfectly perfect in Cinderella 3, there's this false consciousness of perfectness that is being generated, and so much more than a dream. What happens is it's similar to one of the songs again, similar to Cinderella scene Cinderella is similar to Aladdin, because Aladdin, what happens is he also wants to become rich and be a prince, and so does Cinderella. She wants to be a princess, but we see again Aladdin in more active mode than Cinderella. So this again, it's talking about how this more reflects towards love and only love. In Anastasia's theme, she practices "I do" more than "I love you," which implies which shows her mechanical involvement rather than emotional involvement. So I Still Believe is a song which says that, when one is in love, one moves from darkness to enlightenment. But again, the question of enlightenment, one needs to question what this enlightenment is. And Wollstonecraft would say in A Vindication of the Rights of Women that women, when they are in love, a lot of time what happens, they become blind. They are under blind obedience of their lovers. So she has this remedy for women that they should strengthen her mind by enlarging it. So in The Princess and the Frog, again, Tiana is seen as a working woman. It should be appreciated on that level that we have first Black princess, and again, princess being a very, very problematic category because of being a trophy figure. So we have a Black protagonist, and she's a working woman. But at the same time, she is choosing love over her dream. And when the dream, and she gets her dream only because she marries Naveen. So we see a lot of derogatory statements made on women by Dr. Facilier, and also the concept of fairy tales somewhere exists in in Tiana's subconscious. Then there's this particular song, Marbell Evangeline, which reminds me, this glorifies love and puts the beloved on the pedestal. At the same time, it also reminds me of one of the verses of Saint Ravidas, Prabhuji tum ghanvan mora jaise chitwat chan chakora. So, the love of a bird and the bird's devotion to the moon, and how one cannot be, the person cannot be one with the beloved when alive. A person only have, so similarly her Ray who is a firefly, is in love with Evangeline the star, and he could be one with Evangeline only when he dies. So again, Mama Odie is also hinting at love for Tiana, and at the end we have Never Knew I Needed, which Tiana says that there is a change of priorities in her, and these priorities, like, she accepts being Naveen's wife and princess over the owner of her restaurant. So Batke would say that we should actually locate our subordination not only in the hidden recesses of the psyche, but in the duties that we are happy to perform and what we thought were innocent pleasures of everyday life. In Tangled, we see Rapunzel as a very, very talented woman, and she is doing pottery, painting, cooking, everything. So Greer has a take on everyday activities that we do. For example, cooking, clothes, beauty, and housekeeping. So Jermaine Greer would say that once we remove this compulsiveness in these activities and have a pleasure principle in them, then these could be seen as liberating. So where these could be seen as not liberating for Tiana, here for Rapunzel, she, as a talented woman, it could be seen that she is quite happy doing all these things. So in Mother Knows Best, it's what we see is a psychological oppression of Rapunzel, and Batke would say that what happens with psychological oppression, this dehumanizing and depersonalizing, and it attacks the person in her personhood. So all this tension between Rapunzel and Gothel shows that how Gothel has done infantilization of Rapunzel. And Naomi Wolf would even say that in what happens in beauty myth is that one woman is put against the another. So there's this competition where one woman is trying to put down the other women. So older women fear younger ones fear old women, and world is run by old men. But what happens to the old women? They're erased from the culture, and they're seen, and a banned, ostracized person becomes a non-person. So it's similar to what Helen Sixto also says in The Laugh of Medusa, that women are confined to a narrow room, obviously metaphorically, or in certain levels, maybe on physical terms as well. And there's this deadly brainwashing done to them, where they have to internalize the horror of the dark. They're asked to not move because they might fall, and they're taught that their territory is black. So when I see the light, in I see the light, there's awakening of Rapunzel. But again, this awakening has to be questioned to what kind of awakening is taking place. So when I talk of Frozen, it's Elsa is seen in terms of ice, beautiful, powerful, stronger than 100 men. So Nivedita Menon, in seeing like a feminist, quotes Subhadra Kumari Chauhan, "Khoob ladi mardani, wo to Jhansi wali rani thi." So she says that bravery cannot be seen as a feminine quality. Bravery is seen as a masculine virtue, no matter how many women may display it or how few men. It's something similar to what is happening to Elsa. And when patriarchy cannot take in such a strong woman, she's given terms like cut, strike, mine, split, break. So, and people are asked to stay safe from her because she might destroy everyone according to the society. Then for the first time in forever, Elsa is trying hard to maintain her good girl image. Thus, she injects self-surveillance on herself. Again, the concept of love at first sight still exists in a film which is made in 2013. And Let It Go is seen as Elsa comes out as a very, very strong individual. And when we see her castle, she sees herself as the queen of her ice castle. So I'll just take 5 more minutes and finish it off. Again, so let me conclude. So my aesthetics was feminism here. And when we see dresses and body language, women are seen to wear gowns, trindle bodice, and a long skirt. And, because we cannot have a princess in pants. So dresses in Tangled and body movements in Tangled and Frozen as such do not point towards subordination. And Cinderella 2 and in Cinderella 3, we see this subordination in abundance in terms of dresses and body language. Princess and the Frog sees this subordination partially. As the films moved from 2002 to 2013, the spaces available to women widened, and it's the spaces are very, in terms of spaces, it's very regressive in Cinderella 2 and 3. And Princess and the Frog has to be appreciated for being a working woman. We have a working woman there, but again, ending up in marriage and giving up her childhood dream of opening up a restaurant. She gets that as a bonus, no doubt. Entangled, it again ends with the same pattern of marriage and the change of authority from one person to the other. And in Frozen, what we see is we see female bonding, and Elsa does not look for a male counterpart. Anna gets Kristoff in the process, and in Frozen 2, which released last year in 2019, again Elsa is seen to find her calling in the forest, because a women who is powerful cannot fit in the mainland. Songs again fall under both the in Cinderella 2 and 3, they're more of language of patriarchy, and in Princess and the Frog they fall under both the categories. Entangled, the best songs which show Rapunzel as an individual are When Will My Life Begin, I've Got a Dream. Let It Go is a song which similar to Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, and shows Elsa in her best colors. So language that we say in everyday conversations is gendered. For example, we talk of men at work. We see at the construction sites, mankind. So it's very easy to use a prefix dist for women, very easily associated with their character when we use dis and the prefix for women. For example, disgrace, disrespectful, disregard, disagree, disown, disobey, etc. So feminism for me is a practical way of living. It is liberating for me and not limiting. As people say, isms are limiting, but personally, it's not for me. Anybody could be feminist irrespective of gender. Men can equally be victims of patriarchy. Women can equally carry forward the patriarchal thinking, as we see in Lady Tremaine and Gothel. Many times, moral education, value education, fairy tales, and nursery rhymes are gendered. In literature also, there's this blame game always been there. Eve being blamed for the downfall of quote unquote mankind, and Helen of Troy being blamed for the Trojan War. Advertisement, cartoons, films, and songs again are you see the patriarchal mindset there. So there's this need for a gender sensitive society, and which is one of the goals of feminism, and a lot of work has been done on that. Efforts have been put in that. Kamla Bhasin has written nursery rhymes, which has done away with the gender division of labor. He for She was an initiative by UN in where it says that we need supportive men for women to progress. It was formed in 2014. So a lot of slam poetry is coming up, showing up women's issues, talking of women's issues. Change.org is a platform where one can come up with their online petitions. And Slut Walk, an effort to like do away with the victim blaming in case of rapes. The first Slut Walk happened in Canada, and then in India, it happened in Bhopal, Delhi, and Kolkata. So also what we can do in our classrooms or outside the classroom, we can use gender neutral terms. For example, flight attendant, significant other, business person, or Z, gender neutral pronoun used abroad. So through this, though this is the conclusion of my research work, at the same time, it can also be it could give you a platform to explore other areas which I have not touched upon. For example, film studies or comparative studies, cultural studies, or adaptation theories. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shalini. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shalini. That was indeed a very stimulating talk. And in fact, you just managed to take us through all the key and important issues, related to feminism. And, you just showed us how when we are engaging with this, not only the gender discourse, but when we are dealing with the feminist studies, so to say, we need to remember that how these cultural constructs and gaps go on to even shape it eventually. So I congratulate you for such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. And